Hey, what's going on, guys? Welcome to the Suit Up Geek Fix podcast. Today, our journey to the Batman continues. This is part 2. Guys, if you're new to the channel, please be sure to smash that subscribe button. If you love the Batman, go check out part 1, where we break down Mask of the Phantasm and Batman Year 1 and how it ties into the Batman. We're less than a month away. And tonight, it is Valentine's Day. So what better day to talk about serial killers? We are breaking down Zodiac and Se7en, 2 David Fincher classics. And joining me, I've got my man, Loretto. He is at Marcellus Durden. What's up, Lo?
Hello. It's a little gray in California today, but it does not dampen my spirits. I was blessed with serial killer cinema today. A massive double feature that I was very pleased to partake in, and I'm excited to break it down with y'all.
Epic. And then we've got Ryan, at Just Ryan, again on Twitter. What's up, Ryan?
Yo, what's going on, Deebs? Dude, fucking murders on Valentine's Day. That's way better than being single on Valentine's Day. That's all I gotta say. I love it.
And then we've got Formal at the Formal Review on Twitter. What's up, Formal?
Not much. I'm ready to talk serial killers.
Yeah, the knives are out today. Let's just jump right into 7 here in general impressions. I love how the forces of good versus evil is the predominant theme here. The tone of this is so dark, so ominous. I think Morgan Freeman is so amazing in this film. He has amazing presence about him. He gives such a good performance here as a detective on the way out. He didn't win anything for 7, but Morgan Freeman here, when I think of great Morgan Freeman movies, this is among my top, one of my favorite performances from Morgan Freeman, even though he didn't win anything. It's a film that I've seen just hundreds of times. I remember when I was 11, when this film was released. I didn't see it until that middle school, high school time period. But not unlike Nightmare Before Christmas did for animation, this movie blew my mind when I watched it. It put David Fincher on the map for me. It's a movie that to this day, if it's on TV, I watch every single second of it until the credits hit. I love it. What about you, Lo? What's your general impressions of 7?
Just in terms of cinema, it's just the production design, the Howard Shore score. It just gets under your skin. It's interesting because it's some people debate whether or not it's a horror film, but what I think it does well is just create tension and build up this suspense of as the further they go down this rabbit hole. And one thing that I think that in terms of impressions, what really hit me the most was the crime scenes, them actually doing the investigating. I feel dirty when they walk off of those scenes. I feel gross, especially that first guy, Gluttony, where he's face down in the spaghetti, but you just look and it's just, you see roaches and you see it's darkly lit, but you can just see how disgusting the environment is, and the bucket of vomit that's under the table, and just those kind of details is it just gets to you. And I think the journey we go on with Detective Mills, played by Brad Pitt, he goes in really cocky and naive in the whole, homicide game, thinking he's the shit. And then it's just, man, the journey he goes through all the way to the end, it's a hell of an experience for sure.
Reminds me of Ethan Hawke in Training Day. So nice, so naive, so ready to cure everything, fix the world. He gets put in his place pretty fast. What about you, Ryan?
Nah, honestly, I was telling you guys before the show started, this is my first time watching 7, and I kind of put it off because I always had the ending spoiled for me, but I'm glad I watched it now because I feel a lot different about this ending than I feel like I would have if I never watched it. Because wow, between the crime scenes in this movie, like you said, Lo, between all of them, they're all just fucked up in their own right. I'll get to this moment a little bit later, but one that's really memorable for me is I don't remember his name, but they found him just barely alive, and he went breathing, and he got all the needle marks in his arm, bro.
So good.
That was the only thing within the past few years, I'd say. And bro, I've seen Green Inferno, I've seen some sadistic shit that almost got me when I'm just oh my god, bro. And the fact just watching Morgan Freeman roam around these premises so nonchalant and chill, bro, I do this every fucking day. You really don't know how bad it is here. And yeah, Deebs, Brad Pitt gets his ass put in place. Mills gets put in place real fucking fast, especially with the ending, man. Love it.
What about you, Formal?
Yeah, man, like I echo pretty much everything what you guys said. I love like everything about the film. I hadn't seen it in a really long time, but it's one thing I think that it really does very well is that I mean it's a decent like length film, but also like it doesn't feel like it to me. Like as it just keeps going and more intense scenes. And what I noticed, I think, on my most recent rewatch was that like Fincher doesn't like really show any of the murders, which I didn't really notice. I didn't remember, and I thought that was like you just see kind of the aftermath or like how like the people are affected. Like it's all just your imagination, pretty much just you're imagining how he's killing them, but you don't actually see them like gruesomely like do it. And I think that was such a cool stylistic thing that Fincher did really well in this, and like you said, great performances by both of them, especially by Brad Pitt, who I think at the time was like at the top of his career.
Dude,
He's
this is
like pretty
peak
boy.
Brad Pitt right here. This is peak Brad Pitt.
Yeah.
Let's roll right into best moments for me. My favorite scene was John Doe surrendering. Like that scene is just so brilliant on so many levels. For the entire movie, like you don't see him, like he's just kind of lurking in the shadows. He's got no face and no form, and then you finally see him. He enters the police station with blood all over his shirt, and no one gives a fuck until he shouts, "Detective!" And like you just kind of see like Freeman's like completely nonverbal reaction when you realize like, oh shit, I just saw the devil. I literally just saw evil, the embodiment of evil. And that paired with the score like makes this my favorite scene in the movie. And then, you know, kind of like you think of one of John Doe's quotes from Kevin Spacey, wanting people to listen. You can't just tap them on the shoulder anymore. You have to hit them with a sledgehammer, and then you'll notice you've got their strict attention. Just goosebumps, man. One of the awesome serial killers in film history. What about you, Formal? What's one of your favorite moments?
I mean, obviously you have like the scene that like everyone talks about, like that's pretty much just pop culture now. Like everyone knows it. Even like my wife, who like she had never finished the movie, but she knew how it ended just because of. I mean, that's a great scene. Like even knowing the ending, but I also like think as well is the scene that has what was it? Just like honestly the action, the chase scene like that they have, I think that scene is just done really well, and it's not even like a traditional chase scene in a way, but it's like still I guess done extremely intensely, and it's not exactly the best police work by Brad Pitt, but I think like it shows actually like how I guess manipulative John Doe was being, because obviously like he kind of wanted them to follow him. It's just so like he can beat the crap out of him and like essentially take a picture of him and everything. So a lot of it just like I think was the epitome of that scene.
Love it. What about you, Ryan?
So I got two. Only one because it's Brad Pitt freaking out whenever something stupid goes wrong. When he finds out that the killer's been taking pictures of them at every single crime, it is peak him freaking out. Brad Pitt just flips. He's like, fuck. And it's a classic Brad Pitt freak out. I love that. But dude, the whole third act, the tension is so well built up because John Doe, you really don't know what he's going to throw at you, especially when he doesn't kill Mills and then he lets him live too. He lets him live and then gives himself up and makes a plea deal with them. And it's fucking crazy. And going back to what Formal said, not really seeing anything. You don't see Mill's wife get murdered, and you never really see too much about her being pregnant. It's always just being told. So when you get to that final reveal that it also is her head, but then when John Doe reveals to Mills that she was also pregnant, and Brad Pitt kills it in this moment when it's just staring him gunned down and you see his eyes tearing up. And Morgan Freeman, I'm just like, man, I know you tried your best. He's just running like, throw your gun away.
Yeah.
He's just like, just throw it. But man, great ending, even though you know what happens.
Yeah. What about you, Lo?
Yeah, definitely one of the greatest endings of all time, and that's like, again, that's kind of like the obvious answer, but just to kind of highlight some other great moments in this fantastic film, I want to shout out Leland Orser, who I remember him from Alien Resurrection, but he plays the guy that was in the massage parlor that ultimately murdered the prostitute. And him like shaking in the interrogating room, and he was like, "He had a gun in my mouth, and I fucked her," and I was just like, "Fuck!" Like that, like it's such a, it's like gut wrenching scene because again, like kind of like what Ryan was saying, or I think it was Formal, either of you, but like we don't even have to see it to just know what happened when you see the
picture,
the, knife, the way obviously it's like a knife dick or whatever the fuck it is, but it's just such a chilling thought, and just the way he acts is just incredible. I think the interrogation, especially seeing the two rooms of them back to back, I thought that was a really cool shot. And lastly, I also really like the chase sequence that Formal was talking about, and in particular, I like when Brad Pitt gets hit in the face and he's like in the puddle of water, he looks up and sees John Doe's silhouette in the water, and it's just, God, a beautiful shot. And then the way the gun is against his head, and like, he's thinking about it, but then it just ultimately spares his life, and it just shows the power John Doe has. Like literally his life was in his hands, and John Doe is like, nah, I'm not done with you yet. And it's just like, oh, that's cold. Like so yeah, not my favorite, of course the ending's amazing, but that's just one scene that I really liked.
Love it, man. Let's go into how we think Seven is going to tie into the Batman. I think, the similarities are pretty thick here. I think we're going to see that cat and mouse game between the Riddler and Batman, just like we saw in this one. I think we're going to see the Batman presented with like a lot of clues, and that's going to kind of reveal us information about the Riddler, but also probably a lot of information about Robert Pattinson's Batman. Maybe we'll get like a flashback or two, going back to, I guess, like year 0, year 1, right when he's getting started here, donning the cowl. So I think I go back to the trailer, and there's even one scene in the trailer where the Riddler is purposefully getting caught. I go back to, Kevin Spacey walking into the police station, like, wanting to get caught. So there's that similarity here. So there's a lot, man. I think that like portrayal of the atmosphere and the tone of wherever Seven it takes place. I forget where it takes place for me, but I think Gotham's going to be looking a lot like that. I think there's going to be a lot of similarities between the two. I'll start off with Lo. Like, what's your kind of vibe when it comes to Seven and the Batman?
Well, interestingly enough, it's like, I remember at DC Fandom when the teaser premiered, like you and me were just like, oh, because like that first shot, we see Batman's boots on the crime scene, and then like Jeffrey Wright's like, I think this is for you, and he gives him like the envelope or whatever, it says Batman on it. And I feel like, I mean, not exactly the same, but I feel like we're almost going to see Jeffrey Wright and Robert Pattinson kind of be the Morgan Freeman, Brad Pitt here. And interestingly enough, I feel like the rage that Detective Mills has towards this guy, I think we're going to see a lot of that with Bruce Wayne, because he's unhinged. He's an inexperienced Batman. We see even in the clip later in the teaser where he's like losing his shit in like I think it's an interrogation room, and he's in a room full of cops. So it's like we're going to see that anger, and I think the anger that Brad Pitt showed in Seven, I think, what did he say? He says, I feed off my emotions. And then Morgan Freeman was like, oh, well, that's good to see someone feeding off their emotions, like hella sarcastically. Like, so yeah, I think we'll see that, and also the kind of the grittiness that I was speaking of with the crime scenes. I think that's going to play a huge key in this upcoming Batman film.
What about you, Ryan?
The one thing that I think, the biggest thing, is they're making the city an actual character. Because within Seven, you get this really down, gritty, dirty New York City. And that's exactly what Gotham's supposed to be, with a hint of like LED lights. That's really the only difference. But I'm really feeling that tonal atmosphere, the mise en scene, bro. Everything in this movie just reeks Seven. from what you guys said, from the detective parts, from the city being its own character, and just how the characters are interacting with each other to a point where, like, wow, this, and this is very similar to that, and that. You know what I mean? Morgan Freeman, like you said, Lo, and then Brad Pitt, they're pretty much the same in here with Robert Pattinson and Jeffrey Wright. I mean, just top-notch actors as well in these performances. So, yeah, I just think the character is going to be the city, and I think that's really what we're going to get, because I think we've been dying to see a pretty dark and gritty Gotham City, and I think that's why we have this nostalgia for those Tim Burton ones, because regardless on how you feel about them, you really feel Gotham. Gotham comes alive in those movies, and I think that's what both these two movies are doing and taking inspiration from one another.
We touched on that a lot with Batman Year One. I don't know if you've seen that, Ryan, but like that is like was a big similarity I think we're going to see in the Batman. Like Gotham comes alive, like you said, in the Batman Year One. That's one of my favorite parts. What about you, Formal?
I mean, again, it's echoing everything you guys said. I think, and I agree with all of it. I definitely feel that, like, when I was watching it again, like, I felt that I felt that I was just rewatching, like, the trailer, basically, just for a longer period of time. Like, I could see how there was a lot of inspiration just from the trailer alone. And, like, it goes into, like you said, the grittiness. I mean, obviously Gotham has like a lot of crime that's going on, and like just going down to, like you said, the allowing himself to be arrested and everything. Like I think you really could just put Batman up in like Lo said, as Brad Pitt's character, and then put Gordon as
Morgan Freeman.
Sorry, wow, I'm blanking tonight. Today is a rough day. Anyway, I agree with what you guys said. I think like it's just, you can easily make this story. Obviously, I think the story of how this film progresses, I would say, is a lot more like applicable than Zodiac in the traditional story aspects. I think because it's a comic book movie, I think like you can't really end it how Zodiac ends it. Like that's not gonna work because of obviously the real life stuff. So I think like this story will be a lot more applicable than Zodiac, but I'll get into Zodiac in a little bit.
All right. Just another one that I thought about was I think the killings between John Doe and the Riddler are also going to have some similarities as well. I think in Seven you see John Doe, like he's this like crazy sociopath that gives us these like super grisly crimes, but like they're not localized to the victim. They're more indicative to the problems of larger society. I think with the Batman, you're kind of see that kind of same thing, just like we talked about in last week's review with Batman Year One. I think we're going to see a lot of shared elements here with Gotham's corruption, and most importantly, those like notable authority figures that the Riddler targets throughout the Batman. I think, you know, Batman's he's going to be right in the middle of corruption, top to bottom. And I think that's going to be a lot of fun. Let's go into grades. Formal, how would you? Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
Well, I was just going to like add, because you just reminded me of another thing that I wanted to mention when it comes to like the way how I was talking about earlier, how it doesn't actually show the people being killed. I mean, the Batman's going to be rated PG-13, which obviously is not going to be as gruesome. Like we won't see like the end result as gruesomely, but that like tone of just how the kills are done, and I hope that Matt Reeves will take that aspect and basically just apply that to a Batman film and let our imaginations really apply to how the Riddler, because obviously he's going to be killing people, so it's just how he's going to do it is going to be kind of left up to our imagination instead of just showing it on screen, which they most likely will do because it's PG-13.
I just had an idea of like a toned down Jigsaw, but someone who's a lot smarter than Jigsaw as the villain here, as the Riddler.
Yeah.
Let's go into grades. Formal grade out of 10.
I would say I think a 9.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm not gonna talk negative about it, but I just think that's all I'll say. I'll keep it short.
All right. What about you, Ryan?
I'm gonna go a little bit higher. I'm gonna do 9.4. I don't think it's like perfect, but just like formal, there's a lot of good things, just a few minor things here and there that I would personally choose to change, but 9.4 is fucking awesome still. So
What about you, Love?
Oh man, I hate to sound like such a Fincher like stan or something, but it's like I don't know, I consider this one of his masterpieces. I think he's a brilliant filmmaker, and shit, man, I'm gonna give it a 10.
Nice. 10 for low. I'm in the 9.5 area. This is one of those movies, man, like the first time watching experience, I remember it so well still. And I have to give credit where credit's due, man. This is a movie that for me has gotten better and better and better. It's definitely grown on me. Rewatchability wise, it's up there. For me, it's the benchmark for the crime thriller genre. 9.5 on my end, which means we are rolling into Zodiac here, another movie by David Fincher. Let's start off with you, Lo. What's your general impressions of Zodiac?
Definitely how much more clean this film is and a lot more bright, which I think also plays to some of the more interesting scenes which I'll get to later. Ultimately, though, I think it's masterful in its way that you get the perspectives of Robert Graysmith, you get the perspectives of Paul Avery and Detective Todsky, and you just slowly see them just get unraveled by this harrowing incident that tormented the city of San Francisco and the surrounding areas, which I grew up in for almost 10 years. And it's just crazy, like in a world with no cell phones, in a world with no internet, that is terrifying to know some guys out there talking about trying to kill children in school buses. This guy is just finding couples that just want to like make out. Like, it's like I would be living in a state of fear. It's like that's such a crazy thing to think of. I think Fincher captured that paranoia very well.
Yeah. What about you, Ryan?
I mean, I think that's why Fincher's so great at what he does. He's great at capturing that paranoia and telling us what our fears are. And the one thing I liked about this movie that I know they changed from the real events is Paul Avery and I forgot Jake Gyllenhaal's character.
Robert Graysmith.
Robert, yeah.
So Robert Graysmith and Paul Avery almost never really spoke to each other during the actual investigations. So everything you see between them in this movie is completely made up. So I kind of like what they did there with this character. And especially reading that now, I mean, Robert Downey Jr. killed it in this movie. And I think Mark Ruffalo and so did Jake Gyllenhaal, all three of them played great off each other. And I really like how the story also kind of alternates about halfway through because we're following Jake Gyllenhaal through the story. But the first half is with Paul Avery and then the second half is with the detective. So we're seeing both sides of the spectrum. And I think that's what really adds to that paranoia that Fincher's really good at capturing.
Yep. What about you, Formal?
Yeah, I agree with all of that. I think that I didn't know that about the Robert Downey Jr. and like their characters not interacting. That's really interesting,
right?
Yeah. I think like the coolest thing about this, I think it's honestly it feels more like a more mature film than Seven. And this is not to say anything really against Seven in that sense, but obviously dealing with real life aspects, it's kind of like how do you just tell a story like this that's not just a biopic, you know, or just like with Seven, it's a fictional story. Basically it's simple, relatively simple, going from A to Z, whereas this one, well, there's not really a result that a spoiler alert for anyone who hasn't seen it, like you don't find out really who the Zodiac killer is. And like going into this, like how do you create a film, like a cohesive story, and make for almost 3 hours, make the audience invested in it for that long? And the way he does it is honestly ingenious because like you just have different types of film. Like you think it's going to be a detective story because you have like the police going back and forth, but then it's also this kind of news investigation. And then you're also trying to follow each character and you hope that they're going to get closer and closer, but then they don't.
Yeah.
And no matter what section of the film, you kind of get just this really engrossing story. And I was talking to Deebs offline about this. Like, my wife, when we watched it, one, she's never seen this movie, and two, she didn't know anything about the Zodiac like in real life. She was like thinking, oh, this is the person that's definitely the Zodiac killer. And then when they get to another scene, and then you think it's this person, and the movie basically gives you reasons to believe that multiple people could have been it. And it's really wild that like a film can do that and do that successfully. And I think that's such a great bit of just filmmaking in general.
Dude, you just stole, I think you're reading my notes. I literally wrote down the same exact thing. I think Fincher was just on his game here. He clearly was invested in the material, no question about it. Like, like when you think about it, like, it's such an anticlimactic story. Like, it's a murder mystery with essentially no ending. There's no linear storyline being told. But it's so deeply satisfying when the credits hit, and that's just credit to the direction, like you said, Formal. I think the movie really clicks when it's like giving us every single detail of the case, and you kind of like, you're rooting for Jake Gyllenhaal because you're literally watching his descent into madness. You're literally watching him descend into obsession, and he's going crazy. Like, his entire personal life is in shambles. It gets worse and worse and worse. And I think the cinematography is also just beautiful in this movie. Like, it helps build that tension in some of these scenes. And I love the stark contrast between like that trippy 60s vibe to just insane atmosphere, just absolutely insane atmosphere at times. Let's go into best moments. For me, the basement scene was so scary. Yeah. Like, this is not a horror movie. This is like a crime thriller, but there were some horror elements in this movie. I was shitting my pants in that basement scene. I watched it again recently, and it's just as good as it was when I first saw it. The creeper vibes of that Vaughn character, man, are just completely off the charts. He like closes the book with one hand, and then he slides into the shadows and keeps talking to Robert while Robert's literally shitting his pants and trying to sprint out of the house. I remember thinking, I was so sure, like you said, Formal, that like your wife, like that Vaughn was the Zodiac killer. I was so sure that Robert was absolutely going to die in that moment. It's kind of funny now when you like look back at it that he was just trolling, and I don't know what was going on there, but that scene, the tension in that scene is through the roof. Let's go in reverse. Formal, what's your favorite scene?
So I really like that scene as well. I think it's really like well done. I will so we don't duplicate too much. I really liked, and this sounds bad, but it's like the scene when the Zodiac killer picks up the woman and her child, because this goes into like what Lo was saying like earlier. It's like I was thinking while rewatching it this time, it was like I'm like, why would you get in the car? Just wait for somebody to wait. You can't call them because cell phones don't exist. You can't like call AAA. If you don't know what's going on with you're going to trust this random stranger. That's just how it is. And then like, you just I'm just freaking out for this woman. And then like, right, I'm going to kill you. And then I'm going to throw your baby out the window and then kill you. And it's like, okay, this woman is gone. And then like when in the next scene, obviously spoiler again, but you realize that neither died, and it's like, oh my word, holy shit. Like you feel relieved, but also not at the same time. Like, it's just like, it's just so creepy, and it's such a small scene, and it like, yeah, I can't say anymore.
To piggyback on that, you have to imagine she jumped out of a moving vehicle with her baby.
Yeah.
Like, holy shit.
Yeah.
What about you, Ryan?
And I think that's the great thing about this movie and the way Fincher presents it is you assume they're gonna die within that first act, that first crime, we'll call him, and you're like, oh shit, she survived. And then you go on to the next one, which is one of my favorite moments with the couple. Mm-hmm. And this scene I think is perfect in every way because it gives you all the details you need to know about the killer without seeing him, hearing him, or really anything. Just the way he murders these people tells it all. How slow, just tells you how sadistic he is, and gets some type of enjoyment from this. And just watching them yell, scream, cry, you can see all this unfold. He doesn't need to say anything. And I think that's why once we get to the ending and after we're guessing who is the killer, and even though it's based off real life or based off real life, and technically they've never really found the killer, you sit there and you're like, but I understand this killer in some sort of way at the same time that I feel like you don't get from Kevin Spacey, because they do reveal it's Kevin Spacey. So, and I think it's a beautiful way that Fincher really presents this movie that I love so much.
Yeah. What about you, Lo?
I just want to clarify, Rye, are you talking about the scene like in broad daylight at the?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. I hate to duplicate here, but that is my favorite scene. Like, I've never been so scared in broad daylight, and not even just that, but like when he finally has them tied up, and he finally like stabs the guy. It's just like, oh, like as an audience member, you're just like, oh shit, it happened. And then the girl's screaming, and then he stabs the girl, and it's just like, it's such a simple scene, but it's so visceral, and like as an audience member, it's hard to watch. And I think I'm glad we don't see that too many more times, but it's just such a brutal scene that really stuck with me. And the fact that that guy lived, which is remarkable, because he's like the only witness that ever saw him. We see that later in the film. I think that scene just stuck with me. That one had me shook. And also, Dives, I was shitting my pants in that basement scene.
When he turns off the light and like dissolves into the darkness, oh my god, man! And then he shows up like just right behind him at the door. Oh, I was like, I can't. I thought Jake Gyllenhaal's character was dead. I thought he
for
was
anyone that knows the story, he writes this book. You know what I mean? So you know he's not gonna die, but I don't know. It's just like, God, that he framed that scene so well.
So good. All right, let's jump into how we think Seven is going to tie into the Batman. Formal, lead us off.
So I think, like, I mean, the serial killer vibes, and how, like, honestly, like a serial killer, like in this sense, again, it's an intelligent person. Like he like got books for, and like created this entire cipher, which obviously the Riddler is doing, but like obviously through riddles. Whereas like Seven, it was more of just like they say early on, oh, it's definitely the 7 deadly sins, and we're just kind of trying to get the serial killer. This one, we have to figure out riddles and figure out like what the cipher means. Like that's an entire like plot point in this story. So I think that's definitely gonna like apply a lot to this. I think like we'll have obviously the police investigation stuff. I think that there's also, similarly to what we talked about earlier with Brad Pitt's character, kind of like going down a downward spiral, and then like Jake Gyllenhaal kind of going into this like downward spiral and getting obsessed. And like basically both of these movies, I think in general, just are really good at showing somebody who's becoming obsessed with trying to take somebody down. And I think that that's, as an early on Batman character, that's something that like they could easily show in this story. And I think that's really an applicable thing to what they're going to do, hopefully, with Matt Reeves' film.
It's going to be reversed though. Like I think the Riddler's going to be obsessed with Batman, proving that he's smarter than Batman, right? That's typically the Riddler's character, is that he's jealous over Batman's intelligence, and the Riddler wants to prove that he's better than him, right? That's how I always perceive it.
I mean, I don't disagree with you. I think that's also possible. That's not what I was saying, but like I don't disagree with that statement.
What about you, Ryan?
I definitely think we're going to get like a mix of what the two of you guys were saying, between the Riddler-esque type notes, trying to figure out what's he talking about, what's this riddle. But also, I feel like while he might be jealous of Batman and his intelligence, I feel like he's going to go about it a different way and have some type of political motive that connects to Batman's journey, or whatever the movie is trying to get us to move forward to in the character of Batman. And I think that's how it's really going to connect the most, because I feel like the Batman takes way more inspiration from Seven overall, but I feel like this really hands it in from Zodiac.
What about you, Lo?
Well, I think what Seven did well, but what Zodiac expands upon is something that you're gonna love, Dibes, is detective work. Masterful detective work and seeing the details, opening the files, tracking down the names, and
Yeah.
remembering all the fine details. And I think like it was remarkable, because Mark Ruffalo did a good job, but it was remarkable to see someone that wasn't even a cop in Jake Gyllenhaal just be so persistent and he's going to all these different freaking police stations to freaking just shake some trees and ask the right questions. I think that type of detective work is something I hope we see from Robert Pattinson, and obviously, of course, the Riddler-esque clues. But I think more so the way Zodiac toyed with the media, I thought was interesting. And if the Riddler did something similar, I think that'd be fun because the Zodiac was giving ultimatums like, if you do not print this on your newspaper, I'm gonna kill someone. Like, that's such a crazy way to manipulate an entire like news empire to just bend to your will. So I think if we see some of that in the Batman, I think that would be really interesting for the character.
Yes, one similarity for me, obviously the runtime. The Batman is nearly 3 hours long. The Zodiac is a pretty beefy movie in itself. It takes as much time as it needs to really unfold every single clue, every single part of that investigation. It just so if it didn't do that, like the Zodiac would not make sense. I think it's pretty clear on the surface the Batman's going the similar route here. It's going to peel back every single layer, do some flashbacks, really give us more information about where the Batman, where Robert Pattinson's Bruce Wayne has come from, and where he is now. And the difference I want to see, obviously, is in Zodiac, it kind of is anticlimactic. Nothing really happens. We don't really get that definitive answer we all want. That being said, I enjoyed it, but I am so excited to finally get like Matt Reeves's Riddler reveal here at the end. Like I need to have some sort of like final confrontation between Batman and the Riddler. Batman cracking the case and the Riddler just going obsessively in this giant rage about it and in the costume. Like I want there to be that climatic, just massive cinema style Batman versus the Riddler. I really need that scene because ever since I saw this trailer, that's where my head went. Like we're gonna get a really cool Riddler from Matt Reeves that we haven't seen before. So that's pretty much it. Let's go to grades. Formal, how would you grade Zodiac?
See, this is the thing. It's like honestly, when it comes to like even just comparing these two films, it's hard to pick like honestly which one is better, because like the first one, it really depends on honestly like which one you like. What type of story are you into? Are you into something that's going to have a relatively conclusive ending, and it's just an A to Z story, relatively speaking? And I mean, Seven is going to do that for you, but I would say just based on honestly just a mature and stylistic version of like a director doing exactly everything that we've said already, for me that makes it just a little bit better.
Okay.
So I would still only put it at a 9, and I only do like 10s, so I don't really go in between. So It's like either this or perfect. I wouldn't say perfect just because of it's not the typical story, and if you're not prepared for that, but at the same time, for that reason is why I love it so much. But I get why somebody wouldn't be about that and more into 7 at the same time.
Love it. What about you, Ryan?
I think I'm gonna go a little bit lower than a 7 on this one. I agree with Formal, and these films are both great just in their own aspects because you've got the very stylized one and then you got the very truthful one. You've got the one telling you facts. You've got the one just telling you what happened while who knows how it's going to end, while you're getting a whole story, people getting murdered here, left, right, and center, has nothing to do with real life, but he does it in such a way that it works so well. And I really think that's where you'd go when you think about which one you like more, because overall they're both fantastic fucking movies. But I think I'm gonna go with the 9 on this one.
All right, 9 for Ryan. What about you, Lo?
I'm gonna be honest. I need to watch Zodiac again because I was just really like relishing the finer details, like the editing, the way the camera moves. Fincher really likes those walking tracking shots, especially like walking with a character. I notice he does that a lot. He has a lot of his camera is very active. And everything he does, Social Network, Fight Club, he's very busy with his editing and his camera style. And it's just kind of interesting seeing him grow as a filmmaker. And I'm gonna be honest, just for now, tentatively, I'm in this tie because I like Seven so much. I grew up with Seven, but I think there's an argument to be made here for Zodiac to be the better film. I want to watch it again. But tentatively, I'm gonna give it a 10.
10 from Loretto. Wow, love it. All right, for me, I give it a 9.2. Like it's so clear that Fincher was like literally like Jake Gyllenhaal's Robert character, obsessed with the source material. Like I can't even imagine how much time and effort he put into this film. Like there are so many moments, like when I think about this movie, David Fincher was probably Jake Gyllenhaal like years ago, just obsessed about the Zodiac. And that's kind of like the vibe I had after the film, is that like I wanted to learn about the Zodiac. I wanted to like go out and crack this case. Like I remember watching this movie, and after the credits hit, like I probably watched like 3 straight hours of learning about this entire case, and it's just so interesting. So for me, it's a 9.2. It's not as good as 7. But that doesn't take anything away from it. It is, I think, one of the all-time best serial killer crime thriller dramas ever made, which means we should plug our content, and I'll get the grades. Formal, where can we find you, man? What do you got going
on? So you can find me on Twitter, the Gram, Facebook, wherever. It's at the Formal Review. And this week I'm going to be coming out with my analysis on 3 films now, because we're into the Oscars, so I have to do 3 movies per episode, which is a bit tiring. But I'm going with King Richard, Don't Look Up, and Drive My Car this week. So I'm gonna talk about them and tell you how I feel.
What about you, Ryan?
You guys can follow me just around again at per fucking usual. You guys know the deets, you know the stats. You guys can always find me on Suit Up Geeks. I'm always here. Love you guys.
Loretto.
Yeah, and also check us out on Instagram, even though I don't personally have one. We have one, Suit Up Geeks. Yeah. What do we have going on this week?
Tomorrow we're doing a Doctor Strange trailer breakdown with predictions. That's at 6:30 East Coast time. And then
Harry Potter on Friday, right?
Harry Potter trivia on Friday. Yep.
Yeah, because it was weird not having the Boba Fett thing. I'm thrown for a loop. I'm like, what am I doing this week?
Here are the grades so far. 7 wins the round here. Ding ding. 94.7% for 7, and right below it is Zodiac with a 93%.
That's fair.
Mask of the Phantasm still is on the top. And then we have Batman Year One, pretty far behind. Any reactions to that, guys? Did we get it right?
Honestly, I think it's pretty good to what we all said and graded it, to be honest. We were all between a 9 and at least a 9.5. I don't know about Loretto, but he fell in love with 10s. But at least I can speak for me, Formal, and Deebs.
I think I fell in love with David Fincher. I think.
No, that's obvious.
Yeah. We have Manda in house saying 7 is better than Zodiac all day. Yeah, I would agree with that. I would. Yeah.
I feel like it's one of those things that like there's not a wrong answer.
No, exactly.
Better. You know what this reminds me of? It reminds me of like if you're a Tarantino fan, like what's your favorite Tarantino film? Because he has so many good films. It's like, oh, Pulp Fiction,
yeah, exactly.
You could go either way. So
yeah. All right, guys. Be sure to smash that subscribe button. Check out our next preview for the Batman next week, Monday night at 8 p.m. East Coast time. What are we doing? Is it Chinatown versus Taxi Driver? What did we decide on? I don't even know.
We talked about that. There was also French Connection too.
Yeah,
but I don't know if we were going to try to do 3 movies or just 2.
French Connection's good.
I haven't seen either 3, so I'm excited.
kind of curious how Taxi Driver would relate, but it's up to you guys.
All right, we'll talk about it.
Yeah, we can talk about it offline.
Yeah, we'll be check us out on Twitter at the Suit Up Geeks. We'll be revealing all of that stuff. Follow my man Loretto on Twitter at Marcellus Durden. He is Ryan at Just Ryan again, and the Formal Review at the Formal Review. For Ryan, for Formal, for Loretto, for myself, stay awesome, everybody.